Finally, after over a decade, I'm going to be hopping into Guild Wars 2 and seeing exactly what all the hype is about. Here in my new series, Raw Reviews, where I'm going to be going back into games I either haven't played in a very long time or have never played, and going in without looking up anything, no information, no website searches. I want to go in as clueless as possible and just experience the game as purely as I can. And first up on the list of games I want to try out and review, Guild Wars 2. And this is a game, like I said, it's over a decade old now. I've never really gotten into, but I hear such amazing things about that I just had to make it the first one I went into. I swear this is probably the only MMO with an entirely positive fan base, it seems like. And after experiencing it and playing it and streaming it, probably one of the most helpful fan bases as well. But enough about that. Let's go ahead and jump right into Tyria and see what this game is all about. And man, was I in for a pleasant surprise with this game. There is just so much to like about it. And if I say anything wrong or stupid in this video, remember guys, I'm just going into this raw without having looked up anything or with any knowledge, so I'm okay with that. And of course, as with any RPG, we need to first choose our class, race, character customizations, all that fun stuff. So let's get started choosing our race. And from left to right, we have the Char, the Human, the Norn, the Asura, and the Sylvari. When I first got in here, I thought, yeah, I'm gonna play the Char. They look big, badass, look really cool. Then I selected it and they kind of look like this. Human it is. And I mean, with 9 different professions, I believe they're called in this game, there's definitely no shortage of unique and distinct playstyles to choose from here, and there's definitely gonna be something that suits you as a player. And yes, I know, I'm sorry, the only way I know how to describe these classes, or sorry, professions, is using my rotted out World of Warcraft brain, so you're gonna have to excuse some analogy here. Let's just run down the list here really quick and cover all the professions that we have here. We have the Guardian, which is kind of like a paladin-esque profession, where you're dealing a lot of, melee damage, while also incorporating spells and giving a lot of buffs, or in this game, they're called boons. We then have the Warrior, your stereotypical warrior kind of class. Revenant kind of comes off like a Death Knight, a bit of a dark magic spellcasting warrior. The Engineer, which uses guns and traps and explosives and things like that. We have the Thief, which is like your typical rogue profession. Ranger, which kind of comes off as like a hunter, pet using class, bow and arrow. The Mesmer is a pretty unique one where it's a lot of summoning clones and using what looks like purple arcane kind of magic while doing a lot of like condition and boon transferring and things. It's pretty unique. You don't see much like this in RPGs. Followed up by the Necromancer, which is kind of your stereotypical warlock class, and then your Elementalist, which is really just a mage, right? And seriously, I found this a hard choice. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to play. But if I'm being honest, after I got to the level I wanted to be able to review this game, for a first impression, I went back and did it about 3 more times with 3 different professions to really see what they're all about. But for today's purposes, we ended up going with the Necromancer. Always love warlocks in any RPG game. I always think they have like the coolest looking abilities and backstory, so that's what we're going with today. And did I make the right choice in the end? Hell yeah, Necro all day, every day, baby. Finally, we finish up with our character customization, and what I find very interesting is actually telling your own backstory of your character. There are a few different prompts given with 3 different answers, and you can kind of choose the backstory of your select character through those. For instance, the game asked where I was raised, kind of, what was my standing growing up within this world, going so far as to even asking what one of my biggest regrets was. And I guess I chose I had never searched for my true parents. And while I wasn't sure these are actually going to do anything and it was just for RPG, they do actually affect some of the story and theatrical elements down the road. And once you finally enter the world, you're going to be greeted with a really nice, beautiful, kind of painterly cinematic describing, the trials and tribulations of the local lands you're going to be starting in. And I think this is a great start because, I think the biggest thing to start with is just world building, something to get the player really immersed. And I think this does a good job at that. I don't think there's very much fun in just being dropped headfirst into an MMO with no exposition or any sort of reason for why we're doing what we're doing. And it doesn't even need to be like some, universe threatening event happening. It could be some local bandits are trying to take over a town or something. Just something to give us a motivation that makes us feel like we have a reason and a purpose. And of course, as with any game, the first thing we're going to notice is the graphics. And in this game, yeah, they do look a little bit dated, but I will say it's extremely unique looking, kind of still that painterly look from the cinematic, but you cannot say this game looks generic at all. It definitely has its own feel and vibe to it, especially with art direction. And the actual animation and lighting effects and everything, they're really top notch. And I'm really excited to see where things go from here graphically. I'm sure, there's tons of new expansions with new content, so I'm sure that's going to kind of be, more modernized. And it took me a little while to get used to it, but now I love it. There's definitely a lot of charm and heart and soul in the appearance of this world. The first thing I notice outside of the actual graphics is just the fact that the game drops you headfirst into a bit of an action scene where there's not so much going on that it seems disorienting or confusing, but also enough going on where you can kind of practice your combat, get a feel for the movement. It's a good intro into the first steps you're going to take in the game. You feel a sense of urgency and kind of a need for your help. Quite quickly, we're given experience in our first open world event, and these things are awesome. I really hope these remain a major part of the game all the way through because I really enjoy doing these throughout the world randomly. If you're unaware of what these are, they're basically these orange circles you're going to see on the map. That's basically the area they're taking place in. and randomly some objective is going to be placed within that area. For instance, you can see here in the top right corner of my screen, right now we have the objective to defeat centaurs. So basically we just need to defeat centaurs until the bar fills up, and then you'll get a bunch of experience. And I found over time, as I get higher and higher level, these events become more impressive and more diverse. All of a sudden, just seeing a big, huge group of people all working on the same objective in the open world that just randomly spawns, it's a really cool experience. And once we defeat that opening instance scenario, we're then dropped into the world that is Tyria. And it's at this point the game really starts to show off all the things that it does very well. Right off the bat, I was impressed by so many things that allowed me to, feel like I knew what I was doing in the world while being completely new. So that while I'm exploring and enjoying the beauty of this new world, I don't feel like I'm lost and wandering around aimlessly. Guild Wars 2 really does such an amazing job of, letting you play how you want, while also giving you the perfect amount of like direction and narrative. I think it's really difficult for games to find that balance, and these guys do it so well. So now I think is a good time to really get into the leveling of the game and how that all plays out. And of all MMOs I've played, I think this might have the most unique kind of leveling style to it. If nothing else, it's definitely the most fluid leveling that I've ever seen. While most MMOs are just doing quests, maybe doing a little mob grinding, some dungeons here and there, this leveling is really just about, exploring the world, doing small tasks here and there, doing almost Assassin's Creed like, viewpoint vantage points from really cool high up spots, and you get a cool little cutscene. It really does feel super fluid and kind of like the world is a bit alive, especially with the random events. And all while doing this, you're gaining experience, karma, you're getting gear rewards, you're checking boxes for all the little tracking for the rewards for, exploring everything in that zone. And the beauty of the system is it really never gets boring or repetitive because there's always something kind of new and unique around the corner. Not only that, but there's still max level characters coming back to do this content because they're trying to do, all those explorative challenges, looking to get their reputation up in that zone, collect karma. Zones are not really level specific. You kind of get stat squished to the appropriate level range. So the content for the most part is always at least in somewhat viable. And so far leveling feels quite quick. I mean, I think I got up to level 20 in maybe 3 hours. That might be slow, but considering I'm brand new, I thought it was pretty good. I'm sure this will eventually slow down and kind of taper off, but it feels like a good pace to start off with. There are these excellent little scout fellows all around the map that kind of open up the map for you and show you all the little objectives that are in that little spot. And I find this kind of cool because it keeps a little bit of mystery with the map around you. You can see what's there, but not really in detail. And it also keeps you on the lookout for these little eyeglass scout people to really open things up for you. And they're definitely not like too far out of the way or anything. They're pretty much on your path, so you're not going to miss them. So at least up to this point, it feels like the most efficient way to level has really been number one, map completion, just exploring the world, discovering new waypoints, doing the vistas, and then number two, doing the dynamic events that randomly spawn throughout the world. And these are something you definitely don't want to skip because they give you a ton of experience. And just a cool little thing too for new players, every time you level up, there's going to be this little indicator above your map, and you're going to click on that and see exactly what it is you're obtaining for getting that level, as well as what you will be getting for the next level ahead. Pretty convenient for someone who's like me, new, going and just kind of, knowing nothing. It's actually pretty helpful. And the last thing regarding leveling, because I feel like I'm just kind of rambling about it, is that every so often you're going to get your personal story, which is almost like a campaign in a way. And this is actually going to bring those role-playing elements that you chose in the initial character creation back into play. So those choices where you chose whether or not you were a commoner or nobility, things like that, that's going to play into these personal stories and what variety of it you're really going to see and experience, which is a small thing, but I think it's pretty cool and leads to a little bit more replayability, I guess. Overall first impressions of leveling though, pretty awesome. I mean, it's something so different from what I'm used to. And the feeling of leveling being kind of dynamic and shifting and the world evolving around you and kind of just helping out with things here and there, it feels good. The lack of just a hard quest grind, just, point A to point B, collect this and that, it feels good to get out of that rhythm. Really liking it so far. But I'm not really sure which one I enjoyed more, the leveling or this next thing. But with these two things being two of the most important components of any MMO, I think Guild Wars 2 is off to a pretty phenomenal start. And that second thing is the combat system. I really enjoy what they've done here. And honestly, there's a lot to cover here, so let's get into it. The first thing that really struck me with the combat is the fact the weapons determine which abilities you're gonna be able to use. For instance, if you're using a dagger, you're gonna have one set of moves or spells available to you, but let's say you switch to a staff and you're then gonna have a whole new set of spells. On top of that, if you're using a one-handed weapon and an offhand, that offhand is also gonna manipulate what spells you're able to use as well. So there's really just so many different variations and combinations of spells and abilities that you can mix together. And not only that, you're able to actually switch these weapons within combat. So you can really swap from like one spell book, switch your weapon, and then have a whole new one. So depending on the situation, you want different spells, you can swap right to those mid-combat. I think this is not only really cool and convenient, but I think it will allow for a lot of skill expression. And more importantly than that, I think this allows you to just find a set of spells that you really like and then focus on primarily using that weapon. You're not only given one giant blanket coverage of spells that you have available to you and you just use weapons as a stat stick. You actually kind of hone in on the spells and abilities you like using and the toolkit you like having available to you, and then use your weapons based upon that. Big fan of everything so far. And then when it comes to the actual spells and animations themselves, these things look great. Super high particle density, really saturated colors, abilities and spells that all look really unique when you go from profession to profession. I think you just get a lot of satisfaction from seeing your spells go off because they just look so good. And of course, I have to mention there is actually a dodge feature in this game. So you're actually able to, evade attacks and roll out of the way and duck out of AoEs. This game really optimizes and uses more of a hybrid combat system where it's usually something more like World of Warcraft, where it's just kind of stand in place like a turret and just fire off spells, or maybe New World where you're not actually locking onto anything, you're just actually swinging and dodging. This is kind of like the happy medium, and I really like that. Not to say I don't like either of the others, it's just this one feels unique and I can appreciate that. The AoE ring placement's very fluid and feels good. The casting animation is a little weird and tricky to get used to with timing, but after a few tries, you'll be comfortable with it. I think the hardest thing with me is just remembering not to dodge and roll during my casts. I mean, the game goes so far with the combat that even your mount has an attack, where this functions not only as a dismount, but also a combat engage tool, and it feels super smooth. It's really cool being able to do this. Outside of the spells and abilities controlled by your weapon selection, there's also the 6 through 0 buttons you can see below. And while number 6 is always taken up by just a healing ability, you can, switch this in and out basically using the talent system or the hero points in this game. 7 through 0 are always going to be acquired, it seems, through the hero point, which is the talent system, if you will, of Guild Wars 2. So I guess now is a good time to talk about that. And I mean, I think anytime you go into a new MMO, the talent system, or whatever they want to call it, is always the most confusing part for any new player. Even as an experienced MMO veteran, I was looking at this talent system and really just like, what's going on here? How do I do this? Where do I get started? But hey, since this is a run where I'm not looking anything up or trying to optimize, I really just chose what I thought was cool. So when it came to the Necromancer, I pretty much put all the points I had available with me at the time into summoning demons and companions. And I mean, just look at these guys. Aren't they cute? So yeah, going forward, I'm just going to put points in whatever I think is cool and go from there. So overall, I think the combat system, really cool, really unique, really liking it. Hero point system is confusing, but I feel like it's always going to be confusing in a new game, so I'll just take it as it comes. Oh, and just one more small thing that I did notice that I really liked is that the AoEs of other characters are not actually shown in their full particle density. You'll see like a white ring on the ground suggesting it's a boon or a buff being placed there by someone in your area, and you can stand in it to get that, but you don't see like the full particle density and don't get that kind of Final Fantasy effect where there's just seems like there's too much going on and you kind of get lost in the sauce. All right, so let's finish up the back end of this video, and we're going to do that with what I'm going to call the Vizient variables. And these are going to be the components of the new games I tried that really just make them stand out, make them feel unique, the strong points of the game that really don't fit into a single category. While of course we're going to talk about, leveling and questing and the combat and things, I want to get into kind of the nitty gritty of what makes the game feel the way it feels. The things that really made Guild Wars 2 stand out to me specifically. And for Guild Wars 2, we have the low fantasy kind of introduction and questing and immersion into the world, the amazing city experience, all the insane appearances and customizations in this game, the bags and storage systems used in this game, and also the voice acting. Starting with number 1, what I'm talking about here is just kind of the fact that while you're dropped into a world of high fantasy, the trials and challenges you're introduced to in the game are very low fantasy. You kind of feel like you're just a local hero starting off, you're not starting the game super strong and overpowered. You're just someone who's, semi-capable and happens to be in the right area and can help some of these people with their problems. The game doesn't suffer from like some power creep where it just feels like all of a sudden, you log into an MMO and you feel like you're God. And the tasks and challenges I need to overcome starting off with, they reflect that. And playing this game really just reminded me of how much I've kind of missed those small, like old-timey challenges of like low fantasy elements. Help, there's bandits attacking our town, or there's graffiti on a wall. People are poaching these animals, or these new invasive animal species are running wild. Help us clear them out. You're not in your first few quests defeating some ancient million-year-old eldritch being where you need to be some Super Saiyan god to do so. Like, you're just kind of a local helping some people out using your abilities as you can. I really like that. Now, in terms of my experience with the cities in this game, my God, the human city is huge. I mean, I feel like I've spent like half an hour running around it. I don't think I've seen all of it. I mean, this is part of the old game. Like, this is not anything new. The city is just massive, and they integrate everything into it so well. And they have select waypoints in like different corners of the city because it's so big. Like, to me, that's an indication of how big a city is. You need to have waypoints and fast travel within the same city. But I loved it, and the human city instantly felt super like cozy and cool. I wanted to explore it and see it all. I couldn't get over how big and beautiful it was. Now moving on to just the appearances and customizations of the game. This game seems to go hard with appearances and customizations. Like, That seems to be a focal point. I see some of the mounts and some of the armor people are in, and I'm just like, what is that? How do I get that? That looks dope. And I don't think I'm really experienced enough in the game to understand all of everything that's going on or customizations in general. There's like a die system that I still don't even know what's going on there, but seems to be pretty integral with the customizations. But it's really fun just being in the game and seeing someone fly by in a really cool mount and be like, what the hell was that? How do I get that? We're seeing them in some really amazing armor set and just being like, dude, you look awesome. I want to get to the point where I can look like that. Just think it's really cool to especially see the higher levels come back to the old zones and kind of show it all off. Gets the new players pretty excited, I think. Now the bags and storage, like I said, just a brief honorable mention. I think the ability to kind of collapse everything with the bag, combine all the bags, and then also be able to send your crafting materials into like kind of like a void storage system. I love that. It's awesome. It saves so much bag space and trips to banks. Like I said, I think the whole storage system is really good, but that being able to deposit your crafting materials from anywhere in the world and just, you know, clear your bags of them, love that. Super cool. And then lastly, I really just want to give a shout out to the voice acting in this game, because honestly, there's a lot of it and most of it is very good. I mean, some of it's okay, but for the most part, they really kill it. And I feel like voice acting just goes the extra mile to show that they care about the story and are trying to immerse you a little bit more. So I personally really appreciate when they add these small details in. And I shouldn't even say small details because I know this is like a lot of work for people actually making the game. But I think people just find it to be a small detail. When it's done well, it's just a really good additive to a game, and I like it here. So first impressions of Guild Wars 2, I mean, I'm gonna spend a lot of time playing this game, I can already tell. The game has the core components of MMOs that I really like, while also switching up things that I usually get bored with. The leveling feels good and fluid and dynamic, and the combat is also fluid, and still, you know, there's a lot of customization and options and play styles, all while you're getting the sense of the game not taking itself too seriously. There's not a sense of grinding or a race to the top for the best gear. And building off of that, the community of Guild Wars 2 players is so good. They're so helpful, so friendly. They love helping out new players. And it was honestly such a joy streaming this and just having people in chat really come in and just want to help. And in fact, here, these are 3 of the top honorable mentions I have to just kind of give a shout out to for helping me along the way while I was streaming. Big shout out to you guys. The help was much appreciated. Honestly, I'm gonna wrap this video up so I can go play more of the game. As always, I love hearing from you guys in the comments. So let me know, have you played this game before? Did this video make you want to play it at all? Do you have any tips and tricks for me as a new player of Guild Wars 2? Leave it all down in the comments below. And if you liked the video, make sure to give it a like. If you want to see more from me, toss me a subscribe. But either way, I appreciate you guys watching till the end. Hope you all have a beautiful day. Peace.